B-1 bomber strikes on Iran just changed everything. Not because a bomber flew over a map on a cable news graphic, not because it looked scary. It changed everything because it signals a phase shift, from opening shock strikes to sustained high-volume pressure, right? Aimed at breaking the repeatability of Iran's missile campaign. Here's what you're getting in this breakdown right now, so you don't have to sit through a slow build. I'm going to explain why the B-1 is different from what came before, what targets it's built to punish, what this says about the next weeks of the campaign, and the one mistake people make in moments like this that gets them blindsided right when the situation turns. And the mini payoff is simple. The B-1's entry usually means the US believes it can keep operating at tempo, because the goal is no longer make a point, it's keep them from recovering. Now, let's anchor on what's publicly been said. U.S. Central Command publicly stated that B-1B Lancer bombers struck deep inside Iran as part of Operation Epic Fury, with the stated intent to degrade Iranian ballistic missile capabilities and hit command and control infrastructure. That's the official framing. And that's enough to make this important, even before you argue politics, motives, or who wins. Because in modern war, you can learn a lot from which platform gets used. When. So why does the B-1 change the story? Because the B-1 isn't the plane you send for a one-night cinematic moment. It's the plane you use when you're trying to keep hitting a large target set, day after day, without burning out your most specialized assets. The B-2 is stealth and penetration. The B-1 is payload and pace. The B-1 is the difference between we can reach you and we can keep reaching you. And that's the shift you need to understand. Endurance. Now, if you only know the B-1 from old photos and nicknames, here's what matters in plain English. The B-1 is a long-range bomber that can carry a lot of precision weapons and move fast. But the real advantage isn't speed for speed's sake. The advantage is this. It can deliver a lot of accurate steel in a single mission, repeatedly, which matters when your target list is not one bunker, but an entire system, launchers, storage sites, support facilities, and command nodes. And when CENTCOM frames the strikes as aimed at ballistic missile capabilities, that's exactly the kind of system target that rewards volume. Because ballistic missiles are not just the missile body, they're an ecosystem. Launchers, transport, storage, fuel and handling, C2, targeting, communications, personnel, industrial support. If you want to reduce missile pressure, you don't just shoot down missiles, you make the system less able to launch again tomorrow. That's what changed everything actually means. Now there's a trap here. A lot of people hear deep strike bomber and immediately jump to one of two extremes. Either it's over, Iran is finished, or this is World War. Both are lazy. The truth is more useful, and it's right in the middle. The B-1 indicates the U.S. is shifting into a phase that looks like sustained conventional air campaign, where the objective is to reduce Iran's ability to keep generating missile attacks over time, while simultaneously increasing the cost of any attempt to rebuild and reconstitute. That doesn't guarantee a quick end. It does mean the rhythm of the campaign has changed. Now, why wouldn't the U.S. just keep using stealth bombers and call it a day? Because stealth is precious. Stealth aircraft are amazing at opening doors. They're not always the most efficient tool for maintaining pressure once the door is open. Early in a campaign, you want surprise, you want penetration, you want to hit the hardest nodes first. As the campaign evolves, your problem becomes scale. How many targets? How fast? How repeatedly? That's when you bring in the bomb truck platforms. And that's the B-1's role. So the bigger message is not, we used a different plane. The bigger message is, we're planning to be here long enough that we're optimizing for throughput. Now let's talk about the part nobody wants to admit out loud. If the B-1 strikes are real and sustained, it implies the U.S. believes the air environment is permissive enough, at least in corridors and windows, to keep running a high-tempo strike package. That doesn't mean there's no threat. It means the U.S. believes it can manage the threat and maintain the cycle. And that's the real battlefield advantage, tempo control. Because if one side controls tempo, the other side lives in reaction. And reaction is exhausting. Now, I want to give you one concrete example so this doesn't feel like nice speech. The B-1's first combat use was in Operation Desert Fox in 1998. It wasn't used because it was flashy. It was used because it could deliver sustained conventional effects at range. That is the historical pattern. When the U.S. wants repeatable pressure, the B-1 shows up. So when you see B-1 strikes in this campaign, the pattern is the same. Shift from shock to grind. Now, what does the grind look like? It looks like Iran spending every day trying to do 4 things at once: hide what's left, move what's left, repair what's damaged, keep launching anyway. And the U.S. goal becomes make all 4 harder every day. That is how you collapse a missile campaign, not by winning one night, but by making the enemy's routine unsustainable. Now, let's talk about why this matters beyond military nerd conversations. Because the missile contest is not just about bases, it's about markets. If Iran can keep missiles flying, it keeps the region on edge. Shipping insurance stays high, routes reroute, oil risk premium stays elevated, and the world pays an uncertainty tax. So when the U.S. targets Iran's missile system aggressively, the real strategic goal is also economic. Reduce the frequency and credibility of those attacks so the world stops pricing the region like a live minefield. Now, does one night of B-1 strikes accomplish that? No. The message is not one night fixed it. The message is we are moving into a phase designed to fix it over time. Now, there's another trap in the viral framing. Changed everything implies a clean turning point. Real turning points in modern war are usually not clean. They're cumulative. So here's a smarter way to interpret changed everything that keeps you grounded. The B-1's entry changes 3 things. First, it changes the scale of targeting. Because you don't bring a high payload platform into a campaign if your target list is tiny. Second, it changes the sustainability of the operation. Because you're diversifying the strike portfolio, you're not relying on one type of aircraft or one type of mission profile. Third, it changes the psychological message. Stealth bombers say, we can reach your hardest spots. High-volume bombers say, and we can keep doing it. Now, I want to address what you're going to hear everywhere. Okay, but did it work? Here's the adult answer. You won't know from the first clips. You'll know from behavior over the next 2 weeks. Because worked in this context doesn't mean big explosion. It means missile pressure declines in a sustained way. So if you want to measure impact, here are the 3 signals that matter, without needing classified information and without pretending to be a general. Signal 1. Does the launch tempo drop? Not one quiet day, a pattern. If Iran's missile launches become less frequent, smaller, or less coordinated over multiple days, that suggests the system is being degraded. Signal 2. Does Iran's target mix change? When a missile force gets stressed, it often shifts tactics. Different launch sites, more reliance on drones, more reliance on proxies, more asymmetric moves. A shift can be a sign of adaptation, but it's also a sign the original plan got disrupted. Signal 3. Does the U.S. keep the tempo? Because one big strike can be theater. A sustained air campaign is a policy decision. If B-1 strikes are followed by continued heavy activity, that's when you know this wasn't a one-off message. Now let's talk about the uncomfortable part people avoid. Even if the U.S. is degrading missile capability, Iran still has options, and this is where changed everything can cut both ways. If conventional missile capacity gets pressured, Iran can lean harder into what doesn't require big launch infrastructure. Drones, cyber, proxy networks, maritime disruption, localized attacks designed to raise the cost of operating in the region. So don't fall into the lazy victory story that says, missiles hit, therefore Iran is finished. The more realistic view is, the fight shifts shape. Now I want to give you the single biggest mistake people make right here. This is the one that gets them wrecked mentally and politically. They switch games mid-flight. They start as, I'm watching for long-term trends. Then the first dramatic clip hits and they become, I need a conclusion tonight. Or they start as, this is a short-term event. Then the conflict drags and they become, "This will never end." They change their mental model based on emotion, not evidence. So here's your anchor. Don't judge a campaign by a single sortie. Judge it by whether it changes what the opponent can do repeatedly. That's the only definition of changed everything that survives reality. Now, let's talk about why B-1 specifically is suited to this kind of work. The B-1 is often described as a bomb truck because of its payload capacity. But the modern point is precision. It can carry a lot of guided munitions and hit multiple aim points in one mission. That matters because missile infrastructure is dispersed. You're not hitting one building. You're hitting a network. And networks don't die when you poke them once. They die when you keep removing their ability to function as a system. Now, I'm going to break the pattern with a question that forces clarity. If Iran's missiles are the pressure tool, what is the pressure point? The pressure point is not only the launcher, it's the confidence. If the U.S. can reduce missile pressure and keep it reduced, it changes how allies behave, how insurers price risk, how markets price oil, and how neutral states choose sides. That is the broader strategic value. Now, let's talk about what deep strikes signal to other countries watching. This is not just U.S. versus Iran. Every military with a missile program, every state reliant on shipping lanes, every ally hosting bases is watching the same lesson. Modern war is increasingly about sensors, missiles, and the ability to sustain operations under saturation. So if the U.S. can demonstrate sustained long-range strike tempo, it signals capability beyond this conflict. But if the conflict drags and costs rise, it also highlights that even high-end forces face sustainability questions: interceptors, readiness, and industrial replenishment. Which brings us back to the most important truth. This is a sustainability war. If Iran can keep launching enough to strain defenses, it wins leverage. If the U.S. can keep degrading launch capability faster than Iran can reconstitute it, it wins control. And the B-1 showing up suggests the U.S. is leaning into the degrade faster than you rebuild strategy. Now let's address the emotional core of these headlines. A lot of people are looking for a clean answer. Is this good or bad? The truth is, it's neither. It's consequential. It means the conflict has entered a phase where the U.S. is willing to apply sustained conventional pressure against missile infrastructure and command nodes. That raises the chances of degradation. It also raises the stakes of retaliation. So the risk environment is higher, not lower, at least in the near term. Now, what are the realistic paths from here? There are three, and I want you to hold all three at once, because that's how you stay ahead of manipulation. Path 1. Sustained degradation works. Launch tempo declines. Iran shifts to lower intensity options, and the region moves toward containment. Not peace, but control. Path 2. Iran adapts quickly. The missile campaign continues, but with changed tactics, and the conflict becomes a longer grind where both sides test each other's sustainability. Path 3. Miscalculation. A strike hits something sensitive, retaliation crosses an unexpected line, or an incident occurs in crowded airspace that forces a rapid escalatory decision. This third path is always the danger in high-tempo environments because decision windows shrink and politics speeds up. Now I want to end with one clean takeaway and one clean question. Here's the takeaway. B-1 strikes changed everything. Not because they are magic, but because they suggest the campaign has shifted into a sustained tempo phase, aimed at reducing Iran's ability to keep launching missiles by attacking the missile system as a system. And here's the question. Do you think the biggest advantage in this conflict is the ability to hit deep targets, or the ability to sustain pressure long enough that the other side can't rebuild what you keep breaking? Drop your take. Not financial advice, not military advice, just a framework to stay grounded when the thumbnails start writing endings for you.